Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Lions Grid. It is Tuesday evening, Jeffrey, and this particular week we have the opportunity to celebrate a Lions victory as they go on the road and get a win against the Arizona Cardinals and improve to 2-1 on this young season. How did you feel about that win in Arizona, Jeffrey?
It was certainly a gritty win, led by the defense. Some efficient play with the offense, but definitely led by the defense. And it actually makes me pretty excited about what we have going on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and overall across week three, it was another week where we saw offense is still not necessarily getting in midseason form. Defense is still having the edge. But you know what? The offense made enough plays in the first half to get things done, and that defense held on throughout the rest of the game to make sure we dust off the Cardinals. So, without any further ado, Jeffrey, let's dive in here just a little bit deeper. And I think there's certainly some players from this game that we'd love to call out in this game, and I'll toss up the stats here as well from the box score. Let's get that up and running here. We're coming live to you. Excellent. So, taking a look here, Jeffrey, similar story to last week where outside of the passing yards, which the Cardinals actually had more passing yards than the Lions in this game, another one where you're going to see the Lions kind of dominated the Cardinals on the stats here. If we take a look here at the next slide, of course, these are total yards, passing yards, rushing, and yards per play. But if you take a look here, you can see that time of possession, big time in the Lions' favor. Total plays 68 to 53. So lots of good things to see here from this offense, Jeffrey, as well as the defense. But I think the place that I'd like to start out, Jeffrey, at least talking about and giving some praise, is the dynamic duo that we have in the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
Yeah,
Uh,
we do. They're splitting carries. I think Montgomery's got the edge on that, 51-41, as far as the split of their duties. But they're right there in yardage, right? They're within 10 yards of each other. So we are absolutely splitting up the pain, as it were, and letting these guys one shine and two have their longevity for the season, because clearly we need to lean on them.
Absolutely, it's great to have the rhythm and blues, the 1-2 punch. Being able to have ride the hot hand and let the guys go out there and just do their thing is really great. And not only do we have a dynamic duo in the backfield, but we are seeing a dynamic duo that has developed at the wide receiver position as well. In fact, Jeffrey, the Lions are the first team since at least the 1970 AFL NFL merger to have two running backs, so Montgomery and Gibbs, with 200 plus rushing yards, and two receivers in St. Brown and Williams with 200 plus receiving yards through the first three games of the season. So we have guys, Williams and Browns, JMO, St. Brown, doing some great stuff there at the receiving position as well. And stuff that hasn't really been seen in the NFL so far, having two sets of players perform so well at both the receiving and
Yeah.
rushing positions.
It just goes to show us kind of the weaponry that we've got. I mean, Sam Laporta has been injured and not been able to keep up that historic pace that he was going through last year, but we didn't need him to. Right now,
Mhm.
we have so many other avenues to lean on, and that's a mark of a great team. It's a mark of great team building too. So hats off to Brad Holmes.
And I think probably the thing that should have Lions fans the most excited is that we have yet to see the best version of this Lions offense, right? Like we haven't even seen them hit their final form yet, and they are already on pace to have two 1,000-yard rushers and two 1,000-yard receivers, and they haven't even they're not playing their best offensively that they can be. So there is a ton of room for growth. And that is, I think, probably one of the most exciting things about this Lions team is, yeah, we're early in the season, we're 2-1, we're doing some good things, but there's certainly, there's a lot of room for growth, which is great. Like you'd hate to see your team peak in week 3 of the season, and I don't even think we've really even begun to get close to the summit at this point, Jeffrey. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because we're praising the offense here. We don't need to put our defense out to dry by um, uh, by having them go 3 and out, not having them have this huge time of possession disparity there. It's good. It's a good place to be in, especially now that we're kind of talking. We're about to kind of go over here and talk about the defense a little bit. Like we have multiple good aspects of this team that we can lean on.
Absolutely. And speaking of that defense, one thing that has been very impressive about this team is that they have held opposing running backs for 22 straight games to less than 70 plus yards rushing. The last time someone had more than 70 yards rushing against this Lions defense was way back in week 16 of the 2022 season when Carolina wrecked us. That was the turning point for Aaron Glenn in this defense. That was the moment where Donta Foreman ran for 165, Chuba Hubbard ran for 125 in that game, and they
Oh my
just
god,
ran
yeah,
that
that
ball
was
down our throats. And from that moment on, we've decided no more. We're going to do one thing, and we're going to do one thing only. We're going to stop this run.
which is great because especially this year, I think the meta is kind of shifting to having teams running the ball more because we're not having such stacked boxes. I think the offenses are starting to pivot a little bit and rely on a bit of a running game.
Yeah, and right now we're currently sitting at the third lowest amount of rushing yards given up on the season. We gave up 50 to Kyron Williams, 22 to Bucky Irving, and 17 this past weekend to James Conner. If you, and those are the sort of the leading backs for each of those teams. It was really Kyler Murray in this game who got the most rushing yards for the Cardinals. And Jeffrey, that was a concern of ours heading into this game. We were feeling pretty confident we would be able to get pressure on him, but being able to stop him from using his legs to hurt us was something we were concerned about. And there were certainly some moments, some plays in this game where he put that mobility on display. And thankfully, they were able to make enough plays elsewhere. But certainly, there were a couple moments, Jeffrey, that made me a little bit worried. How about you there?
Absolutely, but he's a great quarterback and he's just going to do great things, right? Like, I mean, if you're
Yep.
looking at Patrick Mahomes, all these great quarterbacks are going to do something that we just cannot stop. A defense cannot stop, but we limited him enough, and our defense have played well enough to one limit him and only had a couple flashes, and two, he had to beat us with his arm, and he couldn't.
Yep. And I think one thing that was really encouraging now, he did get flagged for his fourth pass interference penalty on the early season. So he's still, trying to make that adjustment from the college game to the NFL game. But Terrion Arnold was a guy who did step up and had probably his best game of his young career in this game against the Cardinals. He only gave up 2 receptions during this game, and he was targeted. Kyler Murray threw at him 6 times during this game, which was more than any other Lions defender. So the fact that there were only 2 completions on his watch, yes, again, he did have the penalty. And if you do look at the box score there, you can see the Lions did have 9 penalties for 79 yards, which, is something we'd like to see cleaned up moving forward. But certainly encouraging to see the fact that, yes, a penalty, a mistake, it can happen. But the fact that he only allowed 2 completions after being targeted so much in that game, especially as a lot of that time he was covering Marvin Harrison Jr., he did get a touchdown, but still an impressive performance, I think, from Terrion Arnold in this game.
Yeah, absolutely, because he's been targeted this entire season so far. Teams have been wanting to put him to the test, and yeah, he has given up pass interferences on a clip that we probably don't want to see. But I mean, he's a little rookie out there defending against the best guys out there, and I think he's having a pretty good rookie showing here.
Absolutely. And then another area of that defense that has been impressive has been our third down efficiency on defense this season, Jeffrey. So far, we are the third best in the NFL. Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, and Arizona, our 3 opponents combined so far, are 8 of 31 on third down attempts against the Lions this season. So we are doing a great job of holding teams. So when we have that opportunity to force them to either punt or kick a field goal, whatever the case may be, we are preventing them from getting those first downs on third down. And that's big, right? Because especially when you take a look at how well Jack Fox has been doing as our punter, we're playing out there, if the offense stalls and we're getting into positions where we're doing, trying to fight for field position, right? Like we punt it, we pin them deep, and then our defense holds them and forces them to give the ball back to us in great field position. It's one of those things where it's sort of everything is kind of feeding into each other right now. So that great third down efficiency out of our defense, we held the Cardinals, you can see there, to 1 for 9 and 0 for 2 on fourth downs. The defense stepping up big in big moments is really helping us, along with the special teams and Jack Fox, because he definitely deserves some praise.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
The field position game is huge. Having a good punter is a luxury. Not a lot of teams have that. They're just
mhm,
going to go rely on their defense out there, depending on where they're at. But yeah, it's a good thing to have when our punter is one of the things that we're raving about. I still would like to see some consistency out of the field goal kicking, and I think
mhm,
a part of the um, kind of the even some of the aggressiveness that we're seeing is I don't know if this coaching staff has confidence in our kicker yet. There have been times where we're not kind of putting him out there, where apparently he's got a huge leg, but we've not seen him attempt these huge field goals like we're seeing many other teams across the NFL attempting these ridiculous field goals now. Except Justin Tucker, man, he seems to
old reliable struggling a little bit there for
yeah,
Baltimore.
yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see as the season goes on if we're willing to like build up some trust here and are going for some field goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was especially disappointing to see that was the sort of the missed extra point. As we've been sort of wondering about the confidence in the kicking, the fact that you miss an extra point is definitely not a good way to help build that trust in the coaching staff. So we'll have to see. Certainly, I think the future's pretty bright for Jake Bates, but I kind of, he's got to go out there and sort of prove it at this point. So, but I'm hopeful he can do it. One guy, Jeffrey, though, who is definitely going out and proving it for the Lions week after week, and we'll take a look here at our next image we have. But setting a franchise record for his fifth straight game with at least one sack, Aiden Hutchinson, Jeffrey, continues to be a monster on the edge for the Lions.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and when he has some help on the other side of that line, he feasts. We had loss of Aleem McNeil, and some of that. The other side of the line is still developing. DJ Reader's still getting back into form with that soft tissue injury, but yeah, this guy's an absolute monster, and I think if we get that other side of the line fixed, we're going to see a lot more sack lunches being eaten.
Yeah, and so there was definitely, you mentioned the injury to Alan McNeil. There were definitely some interesting things that happened in this game. We did lose Derek Barnes and Marcus Davenport, and of course Marcus Davenport was that veteran guy they brought in to be on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson, and they are both done. Marcus Davenport has it's a elbow injury, and Derek Barnes has a knee injury, and both of them are going. I think Derek Barnes may come back. I know he's getting placed on IR as well. But I know that Marcus Davenport is definitely done for the season with the elbow injury he sustained. The good news, though, Jeffrey, there were some other injuries in that game, like you mentioned, Ayla McNeil. Everyone else is kind of day to day at the moment. So Brian Branch, he had that tough collision with Trey McBride, and he injured his neck and as in the concussion protocol, but he's day to day. Sam Laporta with his ankle is also day to day. Ayla McNeil with his shoulder injury day to day, and then Terrion Arnold did injure his knee as well. But all of them are day to day. None of them are necessarily considered to miss any extended time with those other four injuries there. But certainly, we talked about, Jeffrey, one of the keys to a successful, first part of the season before we get to the bye week, which is in week 5, was that we needed to get to 3-1 and be healthy. And losing Davenport and Barnes here in week 3, those are some, they're not the most substantial injuries, but certainly could hurt this team moving forward.
No, I think the most substantial injury that we got here this afternoon was unfortunately Frank Ragnow. He has a partially torn pec. So he's actually the only guy here that's like week to week. And that's a little concerning because, our offensive line, it being a unit, right? But it's one of the
Mhm.
best units in the NFL, and a big man with that much experience going down. It's gonna put us to the test for sure.
And I definitely like Detroit Fan Man suggestion here about lighting a little prayer candle for expedient
Yeah.
injury recovery and future avoidance. Because it feels like every year the injury bug is particularly potent. And thankfully, the Lions, for the most part, have been able to steer clear of any major injuries. But it's certainly something that can impact teams. I mean, you look around the league at some of the injuries that happened to a lot of key players in key places, and it's certainly it can be deflating when you're losing games just because of injuries. So thankfully, the Lions right now are looking strong with their star players. So for the most part. All right, Jeffrey. Well, of course, it's great to have another victory in another feather in our cap early on this season. So we do improve to 2-1, and of course, this upcoming week we have the Monday night matchup with a team that has been a little bit of a thorn in our sides. We'll talk more about this game on Sunday morning, Jeffrey. But anything you want to say here about the upcoming Monday night football matchup with those Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, Seattle never plays a normal game, especially against us. There's all kinds of shenanigans going on. Like it devolved into a huge shootout last year. You're right, they are a thorn in our side, and I hope we now with the bad man Pete Carroll gone, maybe he was the juju that was over there that caused all of this. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see us out there, and also it's going to be the debut of our black uniform, so we get to see that Monday prime time out in action. So let's start a new era with the black uniforms and rid us of this the Seahawks business.
It is absolutely a great way to exercise the demons and establish some good juju for those jerseys. Because the worst thing would be is if we like got blown out and then we had to those jerseys and especially those helmets are just fantastic. So if we have to like bury them because of we just get destroyed, that would be very upsetting because I'm a big fan. So. But Jeffrey, that'll lead us to our next segment here, where we're going to go ahead and grind the grid and go around the NFL action from Week 3 and take a look at how the Lions fit into everything. So let's get started here with, of course, the Thursday night game, which was, already in the books by the time the Lions took the field against the Cardinals on Sunday. But as we know in this game, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers getting the win 24-3. And Kirk Herbstreit was doing a lot of kiss-assery for Aaron Rodgers and thinking that he was back in MVP form. Time will tell. But perhaps that we were sort of surprised by the Patriots in Week 1 getting that win against the Bengals. But maybe they are just as bad as we thought they were, Jeffrey, to begin the season. That offensive line in particular looks pretty rough.
I would be worried about putting Drake May back there. I think you're whoever's back there, Jake Brisket or Drake May is going to have a bad time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think this is a Carolina situation where you put in someone else and they look like a different offense, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, that Patriots offensive line is glad we don't have that problem. And then Jeffrey, a team that you had picked to be the last team to get a win on the season said, no, we're going to come in here and we're going to get our win. The Giants traveled to Cleveland and get a 21-15 victory. I don't know if Brian Dabble heard you put him on the hot seat talking about how hot his butt was, but
yeah, they said no you to the locker room issues. They came out there and took care of business and actually looked pretty good.
Danny Dimes, Malik Neighbors is on pace to like bust Puka Nakua's record one season after it got set, which is crazy. And he is just absolutely looking like a beast in that Giants offense. So, yeah. And then on the flip side, the Browns, I mean, is there anything more Browns like than to drop a game to the Giants at home? I mean, that feels right.
And Deshaun Watson's still struggling. I feel like they need to put somebody else back there. I feel like it gets that offense rolling.
Either go with Jameis Winston, perhaps, or maybe call back up Indy and see if you can't get Joe Flacco to come back over, because certainly not impressive what we've seen out of the Browns on offense so far this season. And then we had the unbeaten Saints hosting the Eagles, and despite several injuries to that Eagles receiving core, they did end up getting a 15-12 victory. And so Derek Carr, of course, who was setting the world on fire through the first 2 weeks, and this is why you don't overreact to just a couple of games, came back down to earth here against the Eagles. Jeffrey, the Saints did not look as potent as they had been looking on offense, and the Eagles were able to come in here. And again, Dallas Goedert stepping up to, of course, AJ Brown. He was hurt coming into the game, so he didn't play. And then Devonta Smith, he took that really ugly hit from behind by the Saints defender there and got knocked out of the game, got knocked out and knocked out of the game, unfortunately. But the Eagles were able to get the victory there. Saquon Barkley, another big part of that. But yeah, the Eagles, another team with locker room troubles, getting a win here this past Sunday.
Yeah, we'll see if the Saints can bounce back and see if this is just them going up against a good team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the NFC South not faring so well this week.
Yeah, it's through 3 weeks of the NFL so far. The only thing that I'm sure of is that anything can change in a moment. This
Yes.
is really one of those weeks where it's like any given Sunday really has a lot of meaning because you're not really sure what you're going to see on the field. Next up here, Jeffrey, why don't you take us through your lock of the week? You had the Vikings over the Texans, and what happened on Sunday?
So my lock came in clutch. I picked the Minnesota Vikings to win over the Texans. It was a 1.5 point spread. So really, 1.5 points is really a toss up there by odds. But Minnesota and Sam Darnold, they look pretty legit out there, right? They're young talent on defense is doing well. Darnold is running the offense. He's got the best wide receiver in football to throw to. He scares me a little bit here when we have to play them. Yeah, Minnesota. Spoiler alert: they're current kings of the North, and they're kind of showing us why they might be in the conversation there.
Yeah,
On the other side, Houston just played a sloppy game. I felt there was a sequence of events where they had 3 penalties in a row. It was actually a couple penalties and then like a false start or a procedure issue. Either way, just ugly football and kind of uncharacteristic of kind of this D'Amico Ryan's team. But again, I mean, these guys are young. So they're going to make these mistakes and have these growing pains here, especially here in this second year. But yeah, just a sloppy game by Houston and Minnesota kind of flexing their muscles a bit. Winning 34-7.
yeah, certainly. If Sam Darnold can continue what he has been doing here through 3 weeks, it will be one of I think the probably the single biggest reclamation project I've ever seen. Like if he can continue this level of play, I think the thing that was most surprising to me, Jeffrey, did you know that Sam Darnold is actually younger than Joe Burrow?
What? I did not know that.
How crazy is that?
Whoa, by how much?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly how much, but I know I saw it several times that he is younger
Dang.
than Joe Burrow. So yeah,
Holy crap. That's mind blowing.
yeah, that could. So if he does continue this, it could be a problem because obviously, the Vikings drafted JJ McCarthy. He sort of fell into their laps, and the thought was maybe he could be the QB of the future. But if Sam Darnold keeps this up with Kevin O'Connell, you might just have your franchise quarterback if this persists.
Nuts. Absolutely nuts. First round pick. And oh, man, that's crazy.
And unfortunately for us, I think 3 of like the top 10 coaches in the NFL are in the NFC North right now, which is a problem.
Yes.
But we'll see if we can overcome that. Thankfully, we are one of the other teams with one of the best head coaches. So, Jeffrey, then we had a surprise down in Tampa Bay. Why don't you walk us through the Broncos and Buccaneers here?
Yeah, so Bo Nix had his coming out party. He played excellent. Best rookie game, best game he played in his young career here. Defense also for Denver looks good too. So if Bo Nix can kind of keep improving on a week-to-week basis here, we got some spiciness going on in Denver. But on the other side, Tampa Bay kind of fell crashing down to earth. They were at home. Baker didn't play as good of a game, and yeah, it's I think this says a little bit more about Denver than it does about Tampa Bay. That Denver has some spicy things going on here, but they ended up taking the win 26-7.
Yeah, that Denver defense looks really good. And before we move on to the next game here, just want to give a shout out to Hatter's House there, 7110. Go Lions, and definitely glad that you're here with us on this Victory Tuesday to celebrate the Lions win. Jeffrey, next up we had our other NFC North rivals, the Green Bay Packers, and they were in business against Will Levis and company down in Tennessee. How did that game go for both parties?
Well, the Mayo Man himself, Will Levis, continues his erratic play. Ultimately, he threw a pick six, which isn't going to help anybody at any point in time. So he some growing pains there. This is his first full season of action, so realistically, you could look at this as his kind of rookie year. Yeah, not great for Tennessee. But Green Bay looks like they had all around have a great roster, right? They took care of business, all sides of the ball good with Malik Willis as their quarterback. So that scares me a little bit too, because Jordan Love is pining to come back here in the next couple weeks, and he might come back to a team that's just kind of cruising.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. The Packers' next opponent is the Vikings, so I would imagine, Sam Darnold did get a little banged up in that game at the end there against Houston, but I think he'll be fine moving forward. But if the Packers could somehow get a victory over the red hot Vikings with Malik Willis at QB, because I think it's going to be at least another week before Jordan Love comes back. The fact that they're 2-1 with him out, I think if you are a Packers fan, you're probably pretty happy about that, because that's certainly, I think, better than you could have probably had thought was going to happen when that Jordan Love injury first occurred. Then sticking in the NFC North, we had the Bears traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Colts, Jeffrey. And in this game of two teams that didn't necessarily seem like they were super interested in winning, we had the Colts pulling out the 21-16 victory. Um, Caleb Williams again continues to look a little lost back there for the Bears. Like the Bears defense is great, and you can definitely tell that they have a defensive culture and a defensive game plan. And it just doesn't, that same sort of thing doesn't seem to exist for the Bears offense, right? They have a lot of talent on that offense. Their offensive line, which looked to be improving last year, is now looking to go the opposite direction this season. And so I think this is Matt Eberflus. We had him on our hot butts list last year. I got to imagine, unless something miraculous happens here, that we're probably going to see a new coach brought in to pair with Caleb Williams, because unfortunately, as good as the defense has looked, just the offense with this Bears team, and just, obviously investing the first round pick in Caleb Williams, as well as Roma Donze, who did have his best game of his rookie career. He had 6 receptions for 120 or 112 yards and a touchdown. They invested 2 first round picks in this offense. So, having an offense that can't get things together, I don't see the ownership and management for the Bears letting that happen. And then on the flip side of things, the Colts deciding to really run things through Jonathan Taylor. He had himself a big day, 23 carries, 110 yards, and 2 TDs. And that defense was able to make plays against Caleb Williams. They had 2 interceptions against him, and the Colts, again, getting that win. Anything surprise you about that outcome there between the Bears and the Colts, Jeffrey?
Not really. I think Anthony Richardson is kind of showing his ups and downs for sure. I think it's going to be an experience over there on the offense. And then on the Bears side, yeah, I agree with you. I think the offense is so woeful at this point. And it's not doing Caleb Williams any favors. And, I think the Bears ownership could make a change here if things don't improve.
Now, the spicy thing is, do you think they'll wait till the end of the season, or do you think we could see a mid-season change?
I think they'll wait till the end of the season. I think, if anything, he can be a good tank commander for them to get another high pick, which I think they own some of Carolina's future picks as well. So really, this kind of it really just benefits anything to let him stay and let him kind of kick rocks here for a bit.
Yeah, having those added draft capital from the Panthers certainly makes it a little easier to stomach. So, maybe not this season, but soon the Bears plan on making their move. Then in a battle of unbeatens, Jeffrey, we had the 2-0 Chargers squaring off with the 2-0 Steelers, and Justin Fields and the Steelers making a statement saying we are the better team and improving to 3-0, winning this game 20-10. Justin Fields completed over 70% of his passes in this game, Jeffrey. Uh, Helped lead that offense to victory. And then, of course, TJ Watt continues to be a menace on the defensive side of things for the Steelers. And starting out 3-0, Jeffrey, it looks like Mike Tomlin might be headed to his 18th consecutive winning season. And then on the flip side, Jim Harbaugh getting his first loss of his return back to the NFL. Justin Herbert did get injured in this game and was unable to finish. And then J.K. Dobbins, who has been having a big season, was held to just 44 yards in this game against that Steelers defense. So, Jeffrey, are you surprised to see the Steelers sitting at 3-0 heading into week 4 of this NFL season?
I kind of, with that Steelers team under Mike Tomlin, I feel like a lot of things just shouldn't surprise me anymore, even though I am surprised to see them like this. I figured they would, one, I'd figure we see a lot more Russell Wilson and we get some more Russell Wilson memes out there. But since he's been hurt and on the sidelines, Fields has had his opportunity to take over the starting job, and it's going to be difficult once Russ is kind of back to full health.
Do we think that Russ is actually hurt, or is he hurt? Like, what do we think? Do we think something might be going on there?
Yeah, that I have no idea about. We'll see if we get a couple more weeks and he still has some nagging pain or whatever. But yeah, it's certainly surprising, and Fields has kind of found his home here, which is crazy. Talking about the Chicago Bears, another high draft pick, kind of doing well out here.
Yeah, another potential reclamation project there. And, maybe a team that may be interested in Russell Wilson's services because they look like hot garbage with Skylar Thompson at quarterback there for them. Miami Dolphins squaring off with Seattle. Seattle came into this game 2-0, Jeffrey, and they left this game unbeaten as well, getting a 24-3 victory at home against the Dolphins. And, I just, like I said, Skylar Thompson didn't look good. Occasionally, Devon Achane looked good in this game for the Dolphins by running the ball up the middle. But then, as soon as they started to have success doing that, they switched away from it. And so the offense just looked completely out of whack. They have all of those great speedy weapons out there, but without Tua being that sort of magical glue to hold everything together. And really run Mike McDaniel's offense, it looked bad. On the other side of things, Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense looked great. DK Metcalf had 4 receptions, 104 yards for a touchdown. Zach Charbonnet contributed 2 touchdowns, 91 yards on 18 carries. So the Seahawks, they're rolling, Jeffrey. And as mentioned, they are our opponent for a Monday night. So, obviously they were playing again, I don't think anyone is really shocked that the Dolphins struggled against the Seahawks, considering the injury to Tua. But did this game? How did this game impact your level of worry headed into our Monday Night Football matchup with the Seahawks? Did this help or hurt?
I think it overall hurts because when you're dominating a team, you can kind of stretch your legs, you can kind of run some stuff, you can try some things in the game plan, kind of thing. So they're going to feel loose and confident coming into our game here. But on the other side, at one point we had David Boyle throwing some passes out there because Skylar Thompson was in the back getting X-rayed. So I wouldn't be surprised if they either try to take a swing at some kind of veteran out there who doesn't have a job. Maybe a little reunion with Ryan Tannehill, maybe.
Who knows? That'd be spicy. I like it.
But I bet he would want to play for a contender, which that they do not look like right now.
That's true, but having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to throw to are good things. But as good as that offense can be, the defense really hasn't done a whole lot to help either. Of course, when the offense is struggling and the defense has to be out there for so many plays. It becomes what's that serpent that eats itself? One of those issues where you're just like everything feeds into each other. But
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Speaking of a team that nobody really had a whole lot of expectations for, Jeffrey, what happened in Las Vegas to the Raiders as they played the lowly Panthers?
Oh man, so the Andy Dalton came in as starting quarterback. They benched Bryce Young early Monday of last week, and the Red Rifle delivered. He was throwing dimes out there. This team looked like an NFL offense out there just by switching the dude out. That's pretty damning for Bryce Young. Uh, I think Andy Dalton just ended his career there in Carolina because at one point earlier last week, they're like, "Oh yeah, Bryce Young at some point he'll be our starter again." There's no way they can go back after this. So um, yeah, and
But
on the other side,
he
the
stayed
Raiders.
out there,
Yeah,
Jeffrey, at the end of the game and high-fived every one of his teammates
he.
after that victory.
I mean, kudos to him. You got to put in that hard work to get the respect of your teammates. But on the flip side, the Raiders, they should probably be embarrassed by losing like this to them. They did not look good. They did. They're thinking about a quarterback change from Minshew to O'Connell, but their offensive line's not going to let really anybody succeed there. And I could see Devontae Adams getting more and more pissy.
Yeah, and I think Max Crosby could get a little more antsy as well. And if they want, he did mention that if he was to play for another team, the team he'd be interested in playing for is the Detroit Lions.
Oh
So
my
if
god!
you
Don't
want to
even
give
get
us
me started having Max Crosby back here. Oh man,
Crosby Hutchinson combo could be pretty spicy.
and that
Uh,
side of the line would be just devastating.
and Detroit fan man coming in with the possible insider move there with the Bryce Young potentially becoming the future MI Panthers quarterback. Could be in his future.
You can see over those offensive linemen, maybe.
All right, Jeffrey. Then we had a NFC West showdown between the Rams and the 49ers. How were the Rams able to get the victory here?
They were able to pull it out in epic fashion due to Matthew Stafford being, the king of fourth quarter comebacks. But ultimately, it was the battle of the boy geniuses with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay out there. So it's going to be a good game regardless, just from a coaching side of things. The San Francisco's offense still hummed relatively well without Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk really playing much out there.
You can
Juwan
playing like
Jennings,
ass. You can say
yeah,
it. He plays like
yeah,
ass.
he does not look good. Does not look good. But Juwan Jennings, man, my opponent in fantasy football had him this week, and he scored him a hot 65 points there. But he was unstoppable out there. He was a good replacement for really all those weapons and poor Brandon Ayuk. Sucking, but the LA Rams aren't dead yet. I think with having such a veteran presence at quarterback and have such a good coaching staff that they're going to be competitive and in these games despite all of their injury woes that they've got.
Yeah, and these are definitely two teams that have been hard hit by the injury bug on both sides of things. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp for the Rams, and then of course we're still waiting for Christian McCaffrey to make his debut in the season. So plenty of time left for both the teams, but and certainly dangerous. You never want to corner an animal; they can lash out at you. But certainly two teams that I don't think either one necessarily planned on being 1-2 to start the young season. I don't think that was on their dream boards, but that's where both teams find themselves here heading into Week 4. And then Jeffrey, I know we've already talked about it, but of course, next up here we have the Lions and their trip to Arizona.
Yeah, I think they defense dominated, offense played efficiently enough, and we grinded out a win against a pretty decent young and upcoming team.
Yeah, and thankfully, I know there were a lot of people nationally who were, saying that this was a game where we were on upset alert, but the Lions were able to take care of business, and it feels good. It feels good. Then, Jeffrey, for my lock of the week, I took the Ravens against the Cowboys. The Ravens were a 1-point favorite in this game. And for a while there, I was feeling pretty cocky. I was flying pretty high. It's like, man, we're both going to come in on Tuesday and be able to say, wow, our lock of the weeks, even though they were close games, like the guys we picked to win just blew out the other team. But the Cowboys sure tried their hardest to give me
Yeah,
some palpitations
they
there.
weren't
They did.
playing football for the first 3 quarters, and then they started playing football again, and pretty nuts. They've got the first onside kick recovery of the season.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott just turned it on for out of nowhere at the last minute. CeeDee Lamb probably could have gotten more involved, but yeah, it's when they play all 4 quarters of football, they can be actually a pretty good team.
Yeah, yeah. And Derrick Henry, though, showing up big time for the Ravens in this game. He had 25 carries for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think that should be particularly hurtful to Jerry Jones because, you know, the Cowboys could have been in the mix for a Derrick Henry if they had actually, treated the offseason like it didn't start September 1st after, everyone else had already signed free agents and, they didn't wait to sign Dak and CeeDee Lamb. If they were actually proactive, maybe they could have got in on some of those free agent running backs because it was definitely a carousel at the running back position. And, you look at Derrick Henry and then you look at Rico Dowd, who led the Cowboys with 8 carries and 32 yards. One of these things is not like the other, Jeffrey.
Oh yeah, and they showed a couple shots of Mike McCarthy, and you could tell he had that 1,000-yard stare. He's coaching for his life out there, and it's not looking good.
It is unfortunate. He does feel a little bit like a dead man walking. Then in Sunday Night Football, Jeffrey, we had the undefeated Chiefs heading into Atlanta to take on Captain Kirk and the Falcons. And the Chiefs, and this is something where we're starting to hear more and more fans talk about a little bit of preferential treatment for the Chiefs, but they were able to get a win 22-17. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts there about the no calls that the Chiefs are seeming to get over the last couple of weeks?
I dislike a lack of consistency from refereeing when it comes to really any sport. But, the NFL referees have been under siege for having such inconsistencies in the past. Like, I just, I don't like that. Have a consistent way of calling things, having preferential treatment. I feel like the NFL referees do show that sometimes, and we can see it, and we saw it here, unfortunately. But I feel like they just need to be better. Just be better, be more consistent, and just yeah. I could go on and on about the referees, man.
Yeah, it was a close game there. I think the Falcons should feel pretty good. Of course, they're about to kick off some of their play against some of their NFC South opponents here in upcoming weeks. So it'll be interesting to watch the Falcons. It seems like they maybe have turned a little bit of a corner there, that Kirk Cousins is feeling a little bit more comfortable in this offense. So it'll be exciting to see what they can do. But they gave the Chiefs a pretty good shot there on Sunday night, but ultimately the 2-time back-to-back Super Bowl champs keep on rolling here. And I know they're your pick to be the last unbeaten team here in 2024. But Jeffrey, on Monday night, we saw another one of the unbeaten teams handle business in the Bills as they hosted the Jaguars. Why don't you walk us through that game real quick?
Yeah, the Jaguars offense is all out of sorts, and especially disappointing because Doug Peterson's at the helm, an offensive coach, one who's good at building up quarterbacks, and I think he's on the hot seat. There's reports today about Shad Khan being big mad behind the scenes, and he's typically more of a reserved kind of like hands-off owner. But this is another bad loss, and bad losses are stacking up for one, this coaching regime, and two, unfortunately, Trevor Lawrence, who's not been playing up to kind of his billing as this elite quarterback, or at least an elite potential at quarterback.
Yeah, I almost look at the Jaguars as like the opposite version of the Lions, right? Like both of these teams were supposed to be coming online and really making playoff pushes at about the same time. And like the Jaguars are like what the Lions would be if they weren't being successful and struggling to live up to those expectations. Whereas thankfully so far we're doing a great job of capitalizing on our opportunities. So feel bad for the Jacksonville fans, but it's
Detroit fan, man. Talking about future Michigan Panther Trevor Lawrence. Oh man, the
that's
Michigan
gonna be
Panthers.
quite the quarterback room there
Yeah,
for the Michigan
man.
Panthers. I might buy tickets to see that, see them both on the sidelines there.
Can
That'd be
you
great.
imagine the look on Bryce Young's face if he's practicing Panthers' first home game and then they sign Trevor Lawrence and he shows up? Are you kidding me? That man would be toast.
Look of defeat would return to his eyes instantly. And then we were treated to two Monday Night Football games this week, Jeffrey. We had the Commanders and the Bengals squaring off. And of course, this is a bit of a surprise if you're a Cincinnati fan. Them falling to 0-3, Jeffrey.
Yeah, big hole to be in, especially given, I've said this every week. They've had Joe Burrow for the first time in an offseason where he's completely healthy, running like the offense out there, running the mini camp, running practice, all this stuff, but they can't get it together. And they have been a team that has started out slow historically, but an 0-3 hole is pretty significant to climb yourself out of, especially when you have all kinds of losses like this, tough losses that you just can't get over the hump. But on the flip side, Jaden Daniels, great rookie performance there, throwing some bombs to Scary Terry McLaurin. He looked great. He balled out. It's a great day for Washington. I think this is a statement win for them, just putting their throat down on a struggling AFC favorite.
And Detroit Fan Man again might be onto something there, suggesting that he should go. Joe Burrow should go to Sports Clip for a refund. That the frosted tips aren't
That's
looking
true,
good. But
man. I just don't like the frosted tips. It had its moment in time in history as style, but it's gone. It's gone.
hey, when you look good, you're supposed to play good, and maybe that's the problem. Since he doesn't look good, he's not playing good. That just might be that simple. And then just again to reiterate how crazy of things are here in week 3. So you can see the 4 quarterbacks here on the screen. It's week 3 in the NFL. And Jeffrey, if I had told you at the beginning of the year that through the first 3 weeks of the NFL, Sam Darnold would lead the NFL in touchdown passes, Justin Fields would be 3-0 as the Steelers' starting quarterback, Caleb Williams would have thrown for the most yards by a QB in a game, and then the only QB to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game was Andy Dalton.
Oh,
I mean, in what world do we live in?
that's it, it's crazy, and that's why I love the NFL, because this stuff happens, and you just can't help but be like, man, the irony, the storylines, just it's a soap opera, and I'm digging it.
It's why we tune in every week, because you
Yeah.
never really know what's going to happen, and just it's almost what's whose line is it anyways? The points are made up, or the rules are made up, and the points don't matter, something like that. It's kind of what it feels like at times, because no matter what's you sort of think you have things figured out, teams always find a way to surprise you.
Yeah, and I do feel bad for Bryce Young. I mean, you clearly tell it's affecting him, and nobody really wants to see somebody go through something like that. But I've always been I've always been an Andy Dalton stan. I feel like even his time in Cincinnati, people were dogging on him too hard, but he's a solid quarterback, and he's shown it all throughout his career.
Absolutely, the Red Rifle continuing to fire all these years later and doing some great work. And of course, Sam Darnold was there leading the league in touchdown passes currently, and has the Vikings here, Jeffrey, as our king of the North currently. They are reigning on top at 3-0. And then, of course, the Packers and the Lions both sitting in second place at 2-1. And then the Bears at 1-2 are the basement dwellers currently. We haven't seen a NFC North matchup yet, but that does change this upcoming week when the Packers do play the Vikings. Again, I think this first one isn't going to be it's not going to tell us as much as the second meeting will, because Jordan Love is probably not going to be back this week for this first matchup with the Vikings, but still should be pretty spicy with how well both defenses have played for these two teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well deserved right now with Minnesota. They've played well. They've exceeded expectations. And, I can't argue that they're better than us, because we dropped a game we probably should have won. So as of week 3, well deserved by the Vikings.
Yep, and hopefully there will be plenty of time for us to usurp the throne here as we continue to improve and get our if we can get the offense playing as consistently as our defenses, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. But that will definitely, something that'll happen as we go along here and it'll take time. All right, Jeffrey, our last segment of today's episode, our champs and our chumps for the week. Let's start, Jeffrey, with your champ of the week.
My champ of the week is Kirby Joseph, our talent here in the secondary. He's out there. He's stopping games. He's flying around because we really value playmaking in our safeties. Him and Brian Branch have been doing fantastic. But I got to give it to Kirby Joseph leading the charge on this defense with Aiden Hutchinson on the line.
I like it. My champ, I am going to go with David Montgomery. He had another solid performance and got another rushing touchdown in this game. And again, similar to kind of like Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, how they're leading that dynamic duo in our backfield from a secondary perspective. From our offensive backfield, the running backs, David Montgomery, his humility and his ability to pair well with Jahmyr Gibbs and not, like there are some running backs who don't like to do the running back by committee or, have split carries with somebody. He is definitely a guy who approaches everything the right way and, is works great with Gibbs. Like they both hype each other up. They want to see each other be successful. And so, I think it's great to see Montgomery and in extension to Gibbs really lead the way for this ground game. And it feels good to have one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL, Jeffrey. Feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's never been around in my lifetime because I was just a baby boy when Barry Sanders was running around, really realistically. So it's good to have kind of to be considered a like rough, tough, and gritty team.
Yeah, being able to take control of the ball and be able to get first downs by dominating the trenches. It's that Dan Campbell football, and the fact that we can not only have we is that the philosophy we're following, but it's the fact that we can actually do it is just tremendous. Tremendous. All right, Jeffrey, who do you have as your chump for this week?
So I've got two chumps. One chump, I had to unfortunately give it to me and my camera. We didn't talk about this injury this week, but on the injury report is my USB webcam. Hopefully I'll have these tech issues figured out by next episode. But my real chump of the week really is a group chump. It's all of the fans who threaten coaches and players for in-game results. Fortunately, Dan Campbell has had to sell his house and move out of Bloomfield Hills this week due to being doxxed by a fan. People who do this, you're all losers. Don't do this. It's a game. It's these people's livelihoods. And the fact that you're going to go out there and dox somebody, threaten somebody over a game, ultimately, it's so lame. And I won't say the other words that really describe it, but those are my chumps of the week.
That's a pretty solid chump. I like that and certainly echo those sentiments. And then I think for my chump, mine is less of an issue, but thankfully it didn't end up being a huge thing. But I'm going with Jake Bates and the fact that he did miss that extra point in the game. As you mentioned, Jeffrey, it seems like he doesn't have the coaching staff's full confidence when it comes to kicking. And he tore things up for the Panthers when he had those multiple, 2 or 3 60-plus yard field goals that he kicked at Ford Field when he was playing for the Panthers this past spring. So we know he has a huge leg. We know he can hit big-time field goals. But, when you're a player who seems to be struggling to get get buy-in from the coaching staffs and to have them have faith in you, missing an extra point is not the way to help out with that. So he thankfully, again, it's not a huge deal because that point we did miss didn't end up being a deal breaker. But certainly, again, I'm someone who is definitely in Jake Bates' corner. I'm rooting for him, and I think he can be a really great kicker for us long term. But you got to hit your extra points, man. You just got to do it. Got to do it. Help us out.
Yep, that's a good chump. It'll be interesting to see how we use him. I think I mentioned this a bit earlier. Like, will he get some big moments to end these games when we might think about going for a fourth down instead. So it's gonna be interesting to see, especially as we get into the heart of the season and we're playing some. We got a tough schedule coming up, so we'll see because it's going to be coming down to one score games.
Yeah, we want Dan Gamble. We don't want him to be gambling on kicking the field goal. We want him to feel pretty confident in that. So
Yeah,
yeah, we just want him to help get that confidence up in himself and the coaching staff. And so hitting your extra points is a great way to do that. A great way to help out the Lions grid here, if you did enjoy today's show, is to go ahead and like and subscribe to our channels. We come to you live every Tuesday and Sunday on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. And then we also have a number of shorts and reels available for you on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all that good stuff. And then we also publish each episode to Spotify. So if you prefer to listen to us in podcast format, you can visit Spotify, and the Lions Grid is a podcast there that you can follow and engage and listen to all our previous episodes. So this one from today will be going up as well. And so want to thank everybody here who tuned in live. Brandon Cranford, great to have you here on the show. And certainly it is good to see Sam Darnold be successful here. He definitely came into the Jets with a lot of expectations. Things didn't go well there. It was one of those instances where he was a QB that wasn't really supported by his organization. Then he went down to Carolina, and that was what it was. And then he started to have some success as the backup in San Francisco, and now he's just turning things around. And again, there's still plenty of time in his career to sort of turn things around. As mentioned earlier, he's younger than Joe Burrow. So if he can get things turned around here with Kevin O'Connell, Jeffrey, plenty of time for him to have a successful career before things are all said and done.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see that paralleling what the Jets are doing now with trying to win with a proven but older quarterback there. So it's a cool storyline to see, and I do agree. I do like seeing these quarterbacks who didn't have a great start do well elsewhere, like Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. And it's great that some of these guys too don't get as broken as like Joey Harrington did when he was with the Lions, or David Carr. Like there are a lot of those guys that came into the league and got like so broken down and beaten that it didn't matter where they went. The damage was done. They carried that trauma with them, and they just weren't going to be successful anywhere in their career. So, it is nice to see that for some of these guys who did struggle in their first stops, that they are in today's league being able to find, whether it be their second, third, fourth stop down the road, being able to find some success. It's good to see. All right, everybody. Well, we want to thank everyone for tuning in and being here with us today. Of course, it was a Lions victory, so that made it a fun episode. And then, as mentioned, we will be coming to you live on Sunday morning. The Monday night game. It is a Monday night game this week against the Seahawks, but we'll still be doing our usual Sunday morning show. And then it'll just be a little bit more time between the Sunday show and the final result on Monday night. But Jeffrey, should be pretty interesting, and looking forward to talking that Seattle game with you on Sunday.
Absolutely, man. Have a great week, and thank you all for tuning in.
All right, everybody. We'll talk to you later. I'm Kevin Marhine. He's Jeffrey Raymond. This has been the Lions Grid. Bye-bye.